to lay it all out there. I did hours and hours and hours of conversations with you all and try to find similarities between all of the different interviews that I did. And the 6 sessions that I'm going to take are all of the kind of cross references, right? When 2 or more people that I interview said the same thing, I said to myself, well, there could be a potential learning there, and it could be an aha moment for other folks, right? So when I dove into this session about project discovery, the more I learned about projects is projects aren't the center of attention. It's people that are the center of attention, and where the people that I talk to put their focus. And so that's why I kind of named it, people, not projects. And this was interesting to me. I ended up calling it the discovery myth, but I was asking questions about, like, how do you know where to spend your time? Do you say, oh, I'm having great luck with wellness and hospitals and things like that, I'm going to go after more of those clients? Or, oh, I got a great project from a contractor, I'm going to go focus on contractors and less on clients and designers. Or I'm going to focus on large firms, or those different things. And the feedback was that there's kind of so much people opportunity out there that you have to spread the love and focus both on strengthening current relationships and then spending your time identifying new potential relationships. So you just need better access to those conversations and those relationships. So again, it's a people opportunity, not necessarily just a spreadsheet opportunity or a map opportunity where you see a bunch of pins pop up on Monday and you go, oh my gosh, I got to go to this area and see how many people I can talk to. The other takeaway that I grabbed from that is this kind of question at the bottom. Who usually knows about a project first? And we're not going to run any fancy polls or games this time, but I'm going to give everyone 5 seconds to think about that. I imagine there's no right or wrong answer. There was a consensus answer from the people that I talked to, but it could change, right? I could argue that the owner knows about the project first because they're the one putting up the capital to go ahead and build it out, right?
What's interesting about that, though, is especially when you're talking about acoustics, the owner might not even think about that, right? The owner may not have any thought in his mind about acoustics. And so they know about the project, but is it the designer that thinks about acoustics first? Is it the contractor? Like, who is it at that point that knows it's a project for us? So there's 2 things, like who knows about the project, but who knows it needs acoustics? And so, there's a couple different ways to look at that.
That reminds me of a funny anecdote. I am part of a bunch of manufacturing and architecture and engineering forums. And somebody posted today a shop drawing of a space, and the drawing called out using bubble gum to attach steel trusses. And it was supposed to be like a hidden note in the drawings to see if anybody was paying attention. But again, it was like, whose responsibility is to take care of how are we attaching these 2 steel beams together? Right. It's like that old Van Halen, concert, show rider thing where they would say, take out all the, brown M&Ms. And it's not because they didn't like brown M&Ms. They wanted to see which venue was paying attention. On the other hand, you can get sued if you have a bad shop drawing. So I wouldn't recommend that. But whose responsibility is it? It's not necessarily the client's responsibility to know everything about acoustics like it is a designer or a specifier or even a salesperson. So nobody that I talked to relied on analytics or Monday.com. It's your CRM, it's your back end, that stuff. They didn't rely on Keith to send these sexy marketing campaigns to do the heavy lifting for him. They didn't rely on digging through Dodge day after day after day, trying to uncover opportunities or find VE opportunities. The one way that Construct Connect did come up is it allows you to see which products and manufacturers are specifying other acoustics, and it gives you a really healthy way in to have a structured contextual conversation with the people that you're talking to. So instead of saying, what was the last project that you used acoustics for? I'd love to hear more about it. You can say, oh, I know that you're currently specifying X on this project. How is that going, right? And it just further opens that door to kind of unlock more conversations. I thought that was a really interesting tidbit. All 6 interviewees relied on those 5 things: consistency, market awareness, which I'll explain what that means, unlocking opportunity by asking good questions, staying present, being visible, right? And then maintaining or developing relationships. Know who knows. This is interesting for me. If you look at the 5 components of an entire kind of sales journey, this might be the 5 people that you are going to need to interface with. What's interesting is they all have their lanes and they all know certain things and they don't care about the outcomes of certain things. So a project manager is dealing with pressure points. They're trying to look at everything available, all the risks associated with the job, and trying to figure out where they need to spend their time and dedicate more resources to. And then you have a designer, right? They're focused on what's in front of them right now. Where somebody like a principal or a lead or a partner, they're looking at business growth. What projects may they have coming in the pipeline 9 months from now? And so that brought up the question then when I was going through these interviews, well, yeah, but who cares? Why does it matter? And the takeaway from that is that different people, different roles need different conversations and they need you to show up differently. And by showing up, that might mean one person likes a text and one person likes a call and one person likes an email. But it's also what questions are you asking when they call you, right? They're calling you to figure out some issue. What question can you ask? Or what question can you ask to uncover other roles inside of that project so that you can be more ingrained in that project in future projects? And one of the learnings too was really the more people that you can engage on a single project, the better. Get to know the designer, get to know the contractor, get to know the principal. And so there was a quote that I took from from the interviews. The people who know about projects first are rarely the people we talk to most often. So it takes a little bit of investigation. It takes a little kind of gumption to get in there and try to figure out who else is involved. The best ask, meaning asking for the project, happens before the need. And I think Kevin and Daniel maybe spent a few minutes on this when they were in San Diego with you all. And it's kind of like, what is that magical question that you can use to unlock conversation from a designer? And then we kind of figured it out, I think, for designers, or at least a decent, good version of it. But what about some of the other roles, right? What are some of the other questions you might be able to tee up? So a principal, because they're so focused on growth, what type of projects are you hoping to win over the next 6 or 12 months? Big projects, small projects? Is it hospitality? Is it an amusement park? Is it corporate and open office space? What are you going after? And again, it helps you unlock those conversations. And what that allows you to do then is tailor your communications in the future, right? If they say, hey, we've done really well with hospitals and wellness in the last year, I think that could be a big thing for us. You could say, great, I actually have an article I'd love to send you regarding acoustics in hospitals. They've been doing studies for 30 years on that, and we have tons of information I can share with you. And it really tailors that communication to that principle. Project manager question, what are the biggest pressure points? Right? Pretty simple. You could easily take that from the last slide. Contractor, what parts of the projects do you think right now are at the most risk? Because they're all focused on getting the material in, getting it installed, and getting it paid. And what is the risk to making those three things happen timely and efficiently? And then this is the kind of golden designer question, right? Because as we saw on the first slide, the people you most often talk to are designers and specifiers. With everything you've learned today, how comfortable are you specifying mode on your next project? So these best practices were shared across all 6 people that I was able to talk to. You have read the territory, and it started out that kind of note as read the territory, literally like read blogs and journals and sites and things like that. But as I talked to more people, there was somebody that I talked to that reads their territory by going to events. They, on average, go to 2 events every single week. And that's how they kind of read the territory. Maybe that's a Chamber of Commerce event, right? Maybe that's an AIA event. It could be a bunch of different things. So you have your standards, like business journals, and universities put out blogs about the development of their campuses and things like that. But there are events and there are other things to look at as well. So kind of the discovery about your customers and potential opportunities happens way before the first conversation that you're going to have about a project, or before you walk in the door on a kind of cold call drop-in. So this was really interesting. I'm so extremely data-driven. I was fascinated by the data behind the decision-making of discovering projects. What I was surprised to learn is that small firms do not equal small opportunities. The competitors are ignoring them. It's easier to become the default for them. And that's just because of lack of resources. And so it takes a capital S specifier, hours and hours to pour through certifications and specifications and documents and health and safety and wellness and all that stuff. So these smaller firms, once they find something, they are extremely loyal, which is great, because then you have this recurring revenue happening over the next 5 years, no questions asked. And like Daniel and I said, next thing you know, you're on specifications that you didn't even go in and talk about. And those contacts can lead to larger relationships and bigger, more important projects. So it's a common blind spot that we thought may be occurring for people who aren't performing up to their goals and standards, let's say. So it's not underperformers like everyone's bad. It's just underperforming against what you think you're capable of. But also certainly competitors aren't spending the time with some of these smaller firms. The third one, building around anchor appointments. We had a few people say this. And when they need to go contact somebody, and that was the other kind of learning from this, is in person is the gold standard. And, you know, I had talked to one of the reps who said they were getting into more kind of leadership and management and strategy and things like that. And when they went back and looked, they were leaving some of their own good contacts kind of on the hook, and no one was taking over that. And, you know, they were trying to do some phone calls and Zooms and things like that, but they said there's just nothing like going to visit their relationships in person. So kind of at a high level, what building around anchor appointments means: make a plan beforehand, see who else is in that area, look up firms that are maybe new in that area that you didn't even know about. And when you're popping in, you know, visit nearby firms, go update a sample library, reconnect with somebody, drop off coffee, introduce yourself to somebody new. And so make that trip more valuable than just a single consulting trip or a single lunch and learn trip or whatever that may mean. And, you know, you might be slapping your head right now going, yeah, I do all these things. This is kind of a no-brainer. And that's amazing. But these are just some of the takeaways that we had, that at least, you know, 3 different people out of the 6 all mentioned these things. And this is something we talked about, right? Visibility creates access. So it unlocks information, whether it's a presentation or a drop-in or a CEU, going to an association event. It's just other ways for you to get in contact with people. And I know Keith knows as well, right? We're in marketing. So, you know, that's what we always say is, you know, what are the different ways that we can have access to your mind share and your attention span and things like that? And so that's why, you know, you have integrated marketing and sales, right? You have emails that you need to send, you have phone calls, you have drop-ins, you have blogs, you have product launches, you have video. Any way that people can access you, they should have the ability to do that. And, you know, we're more successful if we diversify our different channels. So that visibility creates those conversations, which allows you to say something like we've talked about in these other episodes. That's an amazing question. I would love to rope in our acoustic expert. We can actually schedule him maybe yet today, definitely tomorrow. Let's hop on a call. And you're immediately in that consultation and you're problem solving an actual project. So it's for just introductions, awareness, and timing. And again, a couple of pull quotes, because I love pulling real experiences and conversations and things from. So, I'm not just talking to Chat GPT trying to make all this stuff up. These were two actual quotes. The more you're seen, the luckier you get, and you gotta ask questions. So what does it all mean? Discovery through the lens of acoustics. Acoustics is not a commodity. It is not flooring, it's not paint, and I think you could probably say it's not wall covering. And because it's not a commodity, designers are integrating it earlier and earlier and earlier into the process. So if you can unlock conversation, opportunity, and intention of what markets these people are serving and things like that, you can be added to that conversation earlier. And the earlier you're added, the harder it is to take you out down the line. And we know that acoustics is one of the first things to get cut, whether it's cut and they're going to say, hey, we're going to scale back. Let's do just these spaces and we'll see how these spaces sound. And I'll call you in a year. Maybe that's the version of cutback or cutback. Hey, we're not doing acoustics at all. And with the new products that manufacturers like we just launched those 4 new products that we haven't really seen in the marketplace a whole lot. And there's some other manufacturers who are making some incredible products. Acoustics is becoming more of an architectural or even an artistic kind of viewpoint. It's part of the aesthetics of a space. It's not just ugly brown panels that we slap on the wall of our basketball courts at a high school anymore. They're actually integral into the kind of the look and feel and performance of the space. You can start having those conversations extremely earlier. So it's moving from just a finish selection and product choice to talking about performance of each product in each space, the experience of the people in that space, and what it's going to look like in that space. So kind of the throughput, the thread line. So when acoustics becomes occupant experience, wellness, productivity, and privacy, the conversation starts earlier. And it's up to us then to go into these conversations, talking about those things, talking about the design intent of the space, the privacy, how people, how their bodies are responding to the space as far as their comfortability and stress and all of those different things. Activate. We like to activate. These are 3 things that each territory can come together, and maybe they want to pick one, or maybe you just task one person with doing it and kind of report back to the rest of the crew and see how it turned out. These are different ways that you can activate following this session to start putting some of these learnings in motion and make them maybe more concrete in your process. If there is something that we've talked about for the last 30 minutes that you thought was kind of interesting. Turn one meeting into multiple opportunities. So before you go, make a plan. Maybe that's what it is. That would take you 15 minutes to hop on Google Maps and say, what else is in the area? If that's something you're not already doing, make a plan, post, grab those addresses and pins and make a route on Google Maps. Read the territory. If you're not already actively engaging the different news sources that you have that are out there about what's going on with architecture and construction and engineering and the different industries and markets that you serve, create a little bookmark folder inside of your browser. Set it, put it on your calendar. Every Tuesday at 8 o'clock, I'm going to spend 20 minutes, just 20 minutes, reading headlines from these three journals, blogs, websites, or I'm going to attend this event for 1 hour, or whatever it's going to be. So that's an option to activate for discovery. And then the last one, during the next meeting that you have with the people that we talk to most often, right? Designers and specifiers, try to identify what questions can you ask to unlock who the key decision maker is, or the principal is who's overseeing that project, or the capital S specifier, right? The person who is tasked with finding new products, documenting all the certifications and engineering and shop drawings and how it gets installed and all of that stuff, right? That would be a capital S specifier, or identifying the project manager. And so these are very quick activates that could take you in less than 20 minutes to start putting some of these best practices in motion. So now I'm going to hand it over to Daniel, and he's going to run the Q&A. We can talk about the sample that Whitney had. We can talk about new products. We can talk about any successes you've had or interesting experiences, discovering new opportunities. If anybody has anything, let's go for it.
Yeah. So let's start, Whitney, the sample that you've got.
Yeah. Well, first
what
I want to
question?
say, first I want to say I am beyond impressed with the lightning speed you guys turned this around, because I got home at like 10 o'clock on Sunday night from the sales meeting. I had a presentation Monday, consult call happened Tuesday from that meeting. I got my samples yesterday from you guys and then met with the client today. Like, that whole turnaround was so fast. So very impressed. Thank you. My question is, the sides. I don't know if you can see this. Maybe I'm a little too blurry, but the side, you know how you guys, so this was toast felt on toast felt, and then the other two are the printed digitally walnut wood on the background that's toast. So the sides, are they able to be like a darker felt core, or can they be digitally printed on the sides? That was like the big feedback.
They cannot be digitally printed. And if we change the base color of the felt, we have to change the print. And there's a lot of work that goes into that.
Okay.
Because the color of the felt somewhat adds to the colors of the print. And so it becomes a custom print. We currently, toast is the darkest brown shade that we currently have as an option. And so it would also require special order of that color. So,
okay.
Short story, yes. Long story, not a good idea.
Okay. And then the other question was, if they were to replace the front slats with actual like Samfoot wood veneer, can they be wrapped, or would it just be the face?
No, they can't be wrapped.
Okay.
There may be some other options that we can take offline.
Okay, that's fine. But yeah, I just want to say to you guys, like, that was amazing. Lightning speed to get that whole turned around so fast.
Yeah, well, and we'll make sure to pass that along to everybody too. We love hearing that stuff.
Yeah.
It makes it easier to come in tomorrow morning.
You know?
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, so I'm curious. Alma, can you use the color pen to color the sides? You could. It would be very, very time consuming. There was a project. You guys are all familiar with the box baffle and how it has the exposed edges when you make it a wood print. I actually have one here that I can show you. These exposed edges here. There was
Can you guys turn off the Q&A slide and just so we can see you bigger?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Stop sharing. There you go.
Great. So it has this exposed edge, and just to do those on an 8-foot baffle was about 35 minutes. So if you're doing, both sides of a piece, and you've got 13 strips on each unit, you can imagine the time and the number of pens you would go through.
And I'll just, also say something. When I had in my interviews, I was talking to somebody and they mentioned that they are like the de facto bat signal phone call for all things acoustic and wall covering. And so a lot of their relationships will call them where it has nothing to do with mode or national. So with that, most of these slat panel manufacturers who are building a product like that, they all have dark colored sides. Yeah. The only thing you're not going to get with using those style versus ours, because their style is actual MDF that's stapled to it, whereas ours is felt on felt. That being said, you're going to get much less NRC value with that version. It's also extremely economical, and you never know, it might be an opportunity to mention other options to align with their design intent that are not our product. But that product that they're looking for with dark sides, wood on the front, felt on the back, I mean, I can go to Home Depot and buy it for like $4 a square foot.
It also, most of it, you have to pay a premium if you want it Class A, where when it's felt on felt, it's Class A.
Good point.
So that's another kind of selling point there. But any other questions, comments, feedback? You know how much we love feedback and we ask for it all the time. And don't be shy. We can even take criticism. I love it. I love criticism. Well,
If I can
Keith, it
jump
looks
in
like
here.
yes.
Hey, Dan. I just came from training with all the new hires. And one thing that was really, really helpful for me was Kevin kind of breaking down the wood grill felt sample
Mhm.
and talking about the benefits of being able to lay it flat so a contractor can cut the holes if they need to cut some holes on site. But with those new products, and Brock, you touched on it briefly, but that they can be deconstructed. You can break it apart. I would love it if you all would take one of these calls, take one of those new products and break that down for us. Go through that. That was, for me, that was huge. That was probably one of my biggest takeaways from spending time in training. So that's just some thoughts.
What I will say is the samples can be deconstructed. The actual product itself on that is going to be glued because you're hanging these in the ceiling and you don't want any issues, right? But the samples you can deconstruct and show them how it's built, but there will be glue in there for the actual product. Unlike the grill, which there is no glue in any way, shape, or form. That is all felt wear. And so these products here, we designed with the intent that there's not really going to need to be any field modifications. They're going to buy them as is, right? But we do get your point. And we can definitely do that. Maybe one of our other shorter sessions like this one we'll go through and kind of show you how some of the construction happens with some of the products.
That would be really appreciated, because it wasn't just that product. There was another product that I saw while I was there that had been deconstructed, and I was able to see, because when you're just looking at the outside of it, it all looks very clean and closed, right? But when you break it in, I realized all the holes and all the CNC cutting that had to be done, and it helps me just appreciate the entire process of how it's made, and which impacts costs, impacts lead times. Right. And it was just incredibly knowledgeable to be able to see that. So just sharing that. That was super helpful.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Here.
All right.